Hi everyone. So in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about different types of shading and different types of marks that you can make in your drawing. But not only that, I'm going to be talking about why you might want to experiment with different types of mark making. So I think a lot of times students will get introduced to this idea of making different marks, but not always that much about why you'd want to do this. So that's one of the things that I'm going to go into today. So in the first sphere, I'm just using a little hatch mark to make a sense of the form. And so what you're trying to do here is think about you have maybe a light source coming from the top right, and it's giving a sense of three-dimensional form because you have that side on the bottom left that's getting into the shadows, right? So as long as you have a change in the form in terms of going from dark to light, you're going to have that sense of 3D form. But when you're drawing, what you want to do is sort of build it up slowly and have it be gradual. So I think that whenever this sort of thing goes wrong or you don't have success, it's people will have their value be too sudden, or they don't have enough value, and so they don't have that sense of three dimensionality because they just don't have enough of that variation. And I'm also going around the form in a circular kind of motion, so that also helps you get a sense of the roundness of the shape, and it gives it a little bit more of a sense of being three-dimensional. So for example, if I was just doing straight lines across, it wouldn't give that same effect. So now I'm gonna draw in a different way. I'm gonna do more of like a basket weave type drawing on this one, where I'm just making small little hatch marks and I'm going in different directions. And doing this can be another nice way to try different types of textures in your drawings. This kind of mark could work really well depending on the object you're drawing. Like say you're actually drawing a basket, this would be a great type of texture to be using. The downside though is that you don't get as much of the turn of form that you did in the first one, where I'm able to actually make those rounded marks. So whenever you're drawing this way, you want to try to think about that you're using lines to shape the form, not just filling in an area. So I think that, that's something that when people start drawing, it's kind of like a conceptual shift a little bit to think about, like, you're not just going over it to fill in, to make everything gray or everything black, but you're using the lines to actually shape the object. And I think one of the most interesting things about drawing is that everyone draws differently. And I think that that's actually one of the really amazing things about drawing, is that different ways of drawing are going to come naturally to you, compared to somebody else. And you might see somebody else's drawing and just one way of marking, and maybe the way that they use pressure or line might be just different than yours. But that's fine. Like, I think that that's one of the great things about drawing, is that you get the sense of people's individuality. And I'm building up the value in the same way that I did with the first sphere that I drew, where I want it to go from dark to light, but transition gradually from dark to light and not be sort of like sudden. So I want at the end of the drawing, I want the left-hand side, which is more in shadow, to be darker, but I want it to go gradually from dark to mid-tone to light. So that's what I'm trying to convey. So in your own drawings, try to see if you can get that effect where you're going from dark to light, but where it's not sudden. And I think that that will help you develop the skill of looking at an object and being able to see, dark shadows, midtones, and your lights too. So this next one that I'm going to do is similar to the first one, but I'm using a different pen. I'm using a 1 instead of a 005. And even that change is going to give a different kind of energy and sense of this drawing. I'm still thinking about the flow of my lines and the direction of the lines to make sure, see how I'm going around and the lines are rounded around the object. Um, so even by just using a different pen, I'm using a 01 here, you're going to get a different effect than in the first one where I was using a 005. So that's another way that you can experiment. You can try using your 005 and then your 01. You probably have a 03, like if you got a package of microns. They come in different sizes and they'll give you different effects. And anytime you're using pen and ink, I recommend just trying to give yourself as much time as possible. This is the kind of drawing that usually takes a while, and it requires a good amount of patience. So try not to rush this kind of drawing. I think that whenever these sorts of drawings go badly, it's because people like realize, oh no, I have all this to draw and I don't have that much time. And then you get those sort of like more haphazard and messy looking lines. Um, but the nice thing about pen and ink is that you have actually a good amount of control. Like you can build this up slowly, and as long as you have like the patience to kind of sit with it for a long time, you can actually have a lot of control and you can get a really good effect. And it's kind of subtle, but if you notice the first one that I did versus this third one, you notice that the lines, just by being thinner, gives it a different sense. The first one, the lines are a little bit wispier, and the third one that I just drew, the lines just have a little bit of a different energy. So for this next one that I'm drawing, I'm using kind of more of like a scribbly line, and I'm just doing that just to show another way that you can draw, another way that you can make marks, and you can still get the same kind of effects that you would with the other types of lines, but you're building up through scribbles. Same idea, going from dark to light and trying to get that transition from dark to light with these. And you might be wondering, like, when would you ever use this kind of mark? And I don't know, maybe like on an organic object or like on a on a rock or on tree bark or something like that. It could show some of the organicness of the object. So this can just be a different type of mark that you might want to experiment with. And so the purpose of this video is not just to show you different types of marks that you can do, but also I want you to think about what you're conveying when you choose different marks. And this idea of like, can marks show different types of emotion is something that I think is kind of interesting to think about. So this one that I'm drawing right now, you might describe the lines as precise and careful, slow, methodical. All those different words come to mind. Whereas the third one that I drew, you can see the lines are kind of more like slashes, so they're harsher. They have a different energy to them. So with your own drawings, it's kind of interesting to look at the lines and try to think like, what are these lines actually conveying? It's sort of similar to body language. It's like we might not be aware always of our body language, but we are conveying something through, our body language, our gestures and things like that. And I think that it can be the same sometimes with lines, even though we're not always very attuned to what our lines are actually conveying. So going back to what the sphere that I'm drawing right now, this is another way you can draw and make marks. It's very controlled, so the buildup of the form is very slow. But if you're having trouble controlling your lines, like this is a good thing to try because you're building it up so slowly that with these little hatches that you'll be able to be in control of the marks. And on this one, I'm back to using the 005 pen. So again, you're just going to get different effects whether you use the 005, 01, 03, 05. You're going to have a different sense of the kind of marks that you're going to be able to make. And you'll notice that this one in particular is pretty slow going. So remember that what I said about patience at the beginning is really going to come in handy here. And I'm still working on getting that slow transition from dark to light on this one as well. Now for this next one, I'm going back to that little scribble idea, but even this one is slightly different than the other scribbly one. So if you see like in the side next to the sphere, I drew an example of the little mark that I'm making, and it's kind of like this little mini wave compared to the other scribbly one where it's kind of more of like an obvious scribble. So it is different. Like even these slight variations in your marks can give a completely different sense of the object. And here too, this is like a little broken line that I'm going over and over. Kind of similar to the top right one that I did, but the line is a little bit different. And the pen is a 01 as opposed to a 005. So all those little different decisions that you make are going to give you different effects. And here, this last one is just a different type of mark that you might try making, where I still have the small hatch marks, but I'm going in lots of different directions here. So you'll see that even these subtle differences, like changing the type of pen you're using, changing the direction you're going in a little bit, all these different decisions that you make can make different marks.